A fully redesigned Starship. More thrust, more payload, more ambition. SpaceX is targeting mid-March for the first flight of Starship version 3. What changed, why it matters, and what this means for the future of deep space travel. That and more on this week's episode of Astrox Radio. So you might be wondering, why did I choose this topic for this episode? Starship V3 isn't just another test flight. It's a major design evolution, not a small tweak. This is the version that reflects everything SpaceX has learned from the earlier flights, whether they're successes or failures. A mid-March target means we're entering a critical phase for Starship's development right now. What happens next directly impacts timelines for moon missions, Mars plans, and full reusability. There's a lot of hype online, but I wanted to cut through the noise and focus on what actually matters. This flight could be a make or break moment for how fast Starship progresses in 2026 and beyond. So this mid-March target for the first flight of version 3 Starship was what Elon Musk himself had said. So if all just goes according to plan, the SpaceX Starship mega rocket will get off the ground again in about 6 weeks. This flight will be 12th overall for Starship, but the first of the bigger, more powerful version 3 iteration of the vehicle. What's the difference between Starship V2 and V3? It first starts in the payload to orbit. Starship V2 could do about 100 plus tons. Now it's 200 plus. The booster propellant load is about 3,650, whereas the Starship V3 is 4,050. The booster liftoff thrust for Starship V2 is 8,240, whereas Starship V3 bumps it up all the way to 10,000. The ship's height is 52.1 meters for V2, whereas for V3, it jumps all the way to 69.8 meters for V3. The total height, including the Super Heavy booster and the Starship ship, is 124.4 for V2 and 150 meters for V3. This is a complete step up. Starship V2 had 3 vacuum engines, and V3 has 6. This doubles the number of engines on the ship, which is very beneficial to Starship when it gets into orbital flights. So first of all, SpaceX is developing Starship, the biggest and most powerful rocket ever built, to help humanity eventually colonize Mars. Elon Musk has his dream of colonizing Mars because he believes that we should become a multi-planetary species. Just in case something happens to Earth in the near future, we'll still have humans on Mars to continue our species on. Starship debuted in April 2023 and now has 11 suborbital test flights under its belt, 5 of which occurred last year. The most recent 2, which lifted off on August 26th and October 13th, were completely successful. But there was a hiccup in the lead up to Flight 12. The Super Heavy originally slated for the mission buckled during testing in November, forcing SpaceX to get another booster ready. Flight 12 will mark the debut of Starship V3, which, as I said before, is slightly taller than V2, 408.1 feet versus 403.9 feet. Not too much a difference, but still quite considerable. Remember, the meters I said before, those are speculations from before. These are the actual measurements. It's only about a meter taller, but it's considerably more powerful. V3 can loft more than 100 tons of payload to low Earth orbit, compared to about 35 tons for V2, according to Mr. Musk. The increased brawn comes courtesy of Raptor 3, which is a new variant of the engine that will fly for the first time on the upcoming test mission. So if you see a comparison of Raptor 1 versus Raptor 2 versus Raptor 3, the 3 engines have a similar design kind of shape, but then when you think of a rocket engine, you see that lots of pipes going around on the top, moving propellant around, very complicated design. So that was Raptor 1. Then they simplified it a little in Raptor 2. Less pipes going around, but you'd still kind of be overwhelmed as a normal person looking at it. Engineers would be fine with it, but a normal person would not. And then Raptor 3. You can basically, if you count the amount of visible pipes, I would say it's about 4 or 5. And it's very simple design. I do recommend searching up a comparison between Raptor 1, Raptor 2, and Raptor 3. They are way different and in a good way. So hopefully if this launch is during when I'm awake, I will hopefully live stream it. I haven't done a live stream on my channel for over a year now. But if this is while I'm awake, I will probably live stream it. And I'm hoping it will be on target for mid-March. Okay, now let's move on to the secondary topic of this episode, which is NASA and SpaceX move up launch of Crew 12 astronauts to February 11th as relief crew after ISS medical evacuation. That's actually 4 days earlier than originally planned. NASA has announced an earlier than expected target date to launch the next astronauts to the International Space Station. The agency is now targeting February 11th for the liftoff of SpaceX Crew 12 mission, which will fly 4 astronauts to join the skeleton crew presently operating on the Orbital Lab. There's only 3 currently covering the maintenance and science investigations aboard the ISS, which those 3 were left behind on January 14th by the early departure of Crew 11 on the station's first ever medical evacuation. That's what I talked about last episode, I'm pretty sure. Go check that out. Crew 12 astronauts were already in the line to take the Crew 11's quartet's place, but had originally been scheduled to overlap with them before they returned to Earth. SpaceX and NASA had originally targeted February 15th for Crew 12's launch, but managed to get the mission's Crew Dragon spacecraft and Falcon 9 rocket ready ahead of schedule. The astronauts on Crew 12 include Jessica Meir, the mission's commander, and Jack Hathaway, which is a pilot, and mission specialists Sophie Adnot of the European Space Agency and Roscosmos cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev. I'm 100% sure I made pronunciation mistakes with that. I'm sorry. Fedyaev was a relatively late replacement for the cosmonaut Oleg Armetyev, who was pulled off Crew 12 in early December, possibly for violating US national security regulations. The quartet will fly the Crew Dragon capsule Grace to the International Space Station for a longer than normal assignment, lasting 9 months instead of the typical 6. It will be the second space flight for Meir and Fedyaev, and Fedyaev's second long-duration mission. Hathaway and Adnot are both spaceflight rookies headed to orbit for the first time. The launch window for Crew 12 opens on February 11th at 6 a.m. EST, which is 1100 GMT, with liftoff scheduled from Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. The Crew 12 astronauts will join NASA's Chris Williams and cosmonaut Sergei Skroshov and Sergei Mikhailev as a part of ISS Expedition 74, which will eventually transition to Expedition 75 before the end of Crew 12's rotation. NASA pegs the February 11th target as the mission's earliest possible launch date and has designated backup dates in the event of a delay. If Crew 12 doesn't manage to get off the ground February 11th, there are opportunities on February 12th, 13th at 5:30 a.m. and 5:15 a.m. EST, respectively. I don't know how this will affect plans for the launch of Artemis 2, which is coming up on at earliest February 6th, which will be just about a few days after this podcast is uploaded. So go Crew 12, go NASA, SpaceX, and the international collaboration happening in space right now. I haven't got much to talk about when it comes to tech this week, but I do want to shout out this channel. So this channel doesn't have many subs, about 5,000. I can't really say many, I have less than them. But it's called Dorian Todd. And they made this tiny walking robot from scratch. It was uploaded about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it's amazing. Costed them only $60 if you're not counting prototypes. And it's quite cool. Has a screen, has an onboard light processing computer, and 4 legs that can actually walk around. I do recommend to check that out. As a reminder, it's Dorian Todd, the YouTube channel. This is nothing sponsored, I'm just shouting them out. And that's where we'll wrap it up for this episode. A lot to watch in the coming weeks, especially with Starship. If mid-March really is when we get to see that first V3 flight, it could be a pretty big step forward, and we'll be following it closely as we get closer to launch. As we touched on the Crew 12 schedule shift, and how that earlier flight ties back to the Crew 11 medical situation. One of those reminders that human spaceflight timelines can change fast, even when everything looks routine. So as always, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, consider following the podcast so you don't miss the next one. And feel free to share it with anyone who's into spaceflight and launch updates. I'll see you next time.